Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session today. Many of you I have met before, and for those of you who I look forward to meeting, my name is Nicole Cairns, and I'm the Director of Health and Wellness at Thorpe Benefits. So mental health. I feel like besides COVID, that's about all I've been talking to clients and friends about over the last 3 years. It's really been my main focus over the last 3 years. So at the beginning of this year, one of the things we did was we really wanted to understand how we could support our client base in terms of their mental health strategy. So we took some time, many of you got involved, so thank you for that, and interviewed people on what they were doing, what would be helpful. And this today's session is a result of that feedback. So thank you for that. And there were a few glaring things that came out of those interviews that I'd like to share with you. One is that you guys are way too busy. You're often the catch-all person for so many things. You're the go-to person for support as well. When we ask you guys about what your top desired outcomes for the next year were, 92% of you said increased employee well-being, 77% said improved retention, and 62% said improved recruitment. Your main well-being issues were 100% mental health and burnout at this time, which was, in the first 3 months of this year. You guys want to do everything for everyone. You're often the heart and soul of the organization. You're spending a lot of time supporting people because you care, and that can be very draining for you guys because you're also trying to support yourselves and keep yourselves above water and support your family and friends outside of work as well. One of the things that came across was that there's this sea of information in the wellness world that's coming at you or available, and it's really hard to find time to figure out and make sense of it all and know where to start. And even myself, as someone who's been doing this every day for the last 12 years, it's hard for us to stay on top of it as well. And the other thing is you're often working in silos within your company, and you felt that you'd benefit from hearing from other organizations in terms of what they're doing, some of the things they've done that have worked, some challenges that they're feeling, ideas that they have. And finally, if there were two of you, if each of you had two of you, then that would be amazing. And that's where we hope to come in to help do some of the legwork for you. And so this session is about providing you with ideas and resources that are easy to go to, that you can pick and choose from and just execute in a way that would work for your organization. So today, what we're trying to accomplish is that we understand what's affecting employees' mental health and where we fit in as organizations to support that. So giving you strategies and tools that you can implement, understanding what other organizations are doing, because I know that can be comforting, and generate ideas, understanding how we can measure employees' health, and their needs and interests, having a look at what's out there in the marketplace, and a chance to share with each other what you're doing or what your ideas or challenges are. So we're going to start with the state of mental health and burnout. We're going to look at the effects and expectations of organizations on mental health, what affects our mental health, tools for you guys, opportunities for you guys, the 10 most important components of a mental health strategy, what other organizations are doing. We're going to have some time to share ideas, strategies, and challenges. And then I'm going to finish off with where you can start things off. So where do we, I'm not going to dwell on this, but I always think it's good motivation or context to understand what the more recent statistics are around the state of mental health in Canada. So these are stats from the last 2 years. We do have 1 in 5 living at any given time with a mental health challenge or issue. And we also see that same percentage for the number of people that are on disability each year, with mental health being the main reason. We see, this is higher than I've seen it before, 1 in 3 at high risk of mental health issues. So great time to step in and support. 4 out of 5 managers supporting at least one employee with a mental health issue. This is definitely a glaring thing that we're talking about over the last 2 years, and that is burnout. So we see more than 50% of employees experiencing burnout, and that is definitely having an impact on them as an individual and on your workplace in many different ways. When LifeWorks, now TELUS, does and produces their monthly mental health index, they have subscores for the categories that are related to mental health that are impacting mental health score. And we see that anxiety, isolation, and work productivity have been the most concerning subcategories over the past 5 consecutive months, with 28% of people feeling alone more often. And that's mostly people that are under the age of 40. We also see that 33% of us indicate that our mental health condition has worsened since prior to the pandemic. Always challenging to look at. 11 people per day in Canada die by suicide. And we know that it's the second leading cause of death for people ages 15 to 34, and that there's been a 30% increase in suicidal thoughts since the pandemic. So how is this workplace related? So one of the issues is trust. So when trust for an employee in the workplace is low, it dramatically affects their mental health. And when we make positive changes in communication, culture, and when we have employee health and wellness supports, it's the top reason for boosting that trust. And we're going to talk more about that when we talk about culture ideas later. We see that only 26% of people are feeling supported consistently by their organization, and they really want to feel cared about. You see 80% want to feel cared about. We have a third of Canadians citing workplace stress as their primary cause of their mental health issue. 47% agreeing that workplace is the most stressful part of their day. And this is really important to recruitment and retention. 77% of Canadians will leave their current job for the same pay if their new employer offers better mental health support. And 87% of employees are considering health and wellness packages when they're choosing where to work. So this is all about inspiring us to prioritize this. If we weren't already inspired, you're probably preaching to the choir because you're in this session, but I think these are always good things to back up our initiatives. And the good news is we know that when we put things in place, it helps. So this shows, they actually, if you're ever looking at the mental health index, they made a decision, I feel like it was sometime in the last 6 months, to change the way they present their data. It used to be based on negative scoring, where a 0 meant that there was no change in mental health since prior to COVID. And we were somewhere around the -12s through most of COVID in terms of since pre-COVID. Now they've made it a positive percentage. So this is just their older way of looking at it. So what you can see here, basically, I can summarize it and say that when there's really very little support or poor support around mental health, there's a 25% decrease from the national average for people's mental health. And conversely, when there's great mental support, those employees will feel 25% better, will be 25% better in their mental health score on average than the national average. So doing something works. And some other stats that also send that message home: when we have these effective health initiatives, we see higher revenue, more employee satisfaction, and decreased absenteeism. So all this basically leaves us understanding that we have to do something tangible and visible, and that something will make a big difference with all those things: recruitment and presenteeism and absence and so on, and most importantly, will support employee well-being. So before I get into the tools, I want to briefly just remind us what actually affects our mental health. Because what affects our mental health is in turn creates the opportunity for workplaces to support positive mental health. So we used to think that mental health and mental illness was on a linear continuum, maybe we didn't, but often people thought of it that way, but that's not the truth. Dr. Corey Keyes, a renowned sociologist and psychologist, was able to develop this model, which shows us that mental illness and mental health can be independent. Okay, mental health is not the absence of mental illness. It is the presence of flourishing and thriving. So we all are plotted at any point in time somewhere on this model. So for example, if you're sitting at the red, where the red dot is, then you would be experiencing high mental illness. I don't like that word high, but it merely means that you have a diagnosed mental illness that you're living with. So it could be a mood disorder, it could be depression, it could be bipolar disorder. So you're living with a mental illness and you have very high mental health. You're flourishing. So you're someone, if you're in that red dot, who is being supported externally and internally through you may be doing therapy, perhaps you're on medication, you're doing resilience building tools like exercise and meditation, and you've maybe learned cognitive behavioral therapy and you're using that, and you have a supportive workplace. You could also be someone who's living where this green dot is at any moment in time. This person does not have a mental illness, and yet they have low mental health. You've heard that word languishing recently. It's not a new term, but it came out to sort of the workplace in the last year, became popular. So this just means that you're sort of meh. You might be burnt out. You're undermotivated. You don't have things in place that are supporting your mental health. You may not be exercising regularly. You may not have social opportunities. You may not be feeling like you have meaning or purpose in what you're doing, or opportunities for growth so that you're looking forward to things. So if you pause for a second and you consider either where you may be on this vertical mental health axiom, would you be closer to the bottom or closer to the top? Or maybe you consider somebody in your life or your workforce. What number would you give yourself or them? So there are really three categories that affect where someone is going to be sitting on this model. We have things that are causing stress in our life. We have our brain biology, and we have resilience. Okay, and we're going to look at some things that affect all three of those before we go into strategies and tools. There's all sorts of things right from, our childhood, like it or not, had a big influence on that. Doesn't mean that's not changeable, but it did. I've highlighted the ones that I think were negatively affected by COVID. We see loneliness there, which we saw in some of those stats from before. Alcoholism or drug and alcohol use, we know that big spike in that. 23% of Canadians indicated that was increased during the pandemic. I get it, but that may be something that people are holding on to, or that has become more of an issue. Right? So again, these are all opportunities for us in the workplace. Okay, this one's easier. What kinds of things are stressing people out? Do you think? You can say it out loud, or you can write it in the chat. Okay, good. Money, job, inflation, economy, absolutely. Not enough time, totally. Yeah, so again, lots of things, meaning lots of opportunities to help support people. And most of these, besides maybe your commute, have been negatively affected Not in everybody's case, of course, but by COVID. And then we have brain biology, which is maybe less obvious. So the structure of the brain, which means, for example, the size of your amygdala, which is your fear center, the chemistry of the brain, for example, your serotonin levels, and the function of the brain. So for example, how reactive is your amygdala, contributes to your mental health. And again, all of these things are things that we can have an impact on, even our genetics. We are delta DNA by our parents, but the expression of our DNA is within, we have influence over. That's the field of epigenetics. So we know, for example, that mindfulness and meditation can upregulate or downregulate some of our gene expression. So we have the gene, but it may not actually come to fruition, so to speak. And then if you haven't heard about this yet, I would say 5 years ago, I'm always underestimating time, but that's my guess. It's probably longer. The Mental Health Commission of Canada produced a document called the National Standard for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, which is lovingly called the National Standard. And they identified the 13 most influential or impactful psychosocial risk factors for creating psychologically safe and healthy environments. So we see there that trust issue again is up there. So when trust is low, mental health can be low. And you see all sorts of different topics there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, well, actually, I can say it now. So anybody can go and find the national standard. It's a big, thick document. You're welcome to look at it. But there's also lots of support systems around this. For example, there's videos on each one of these 13 areas with ideas for how you can support that in the workplace. There's a measurement tool called the Guarding Minds, which is free, that you can use in your workplace to measure how your workplace is in relation to these 13 categories. So you might be doing really well on workload management, but you've got some opportunities to help with recognition and reward, for example. All of these playing a big part, again, not only in our well-being, but whether or not your employees say, hey, this is a great place to work. I want to stay here, or I want to start working there. So now we're getting into a little bit more about what we as organizations can do. So this pie, this mental health support wheel, which by the way, we sent out handouts this morning. You don't have to use those during this session, but they're there for you. One of the handouts has this support wheel there for you with a description of all the different pieces of pie. So this has 11 pieces of pie in it. I'm sure none of us cut our pie into 11 slices, but unless maybe you have a family of 11. I wouldn't want to be the person who has to try and cut that, because somebody wouldn't be getting pie. Anyways, each one of these slices of pie represents an opportunity, an area that's really important for supporting well-being. And we're going to look at each of these areas with ideas for each. These are about opportunities to intentionally do things that support mental health. So you can use this wheel, for example, as a way of rating, observing and thinking about or planning your mental health strategy. So you could rate yourself from 0 being, meh, we're not doing anything in that area, to 5, I think we're doing really well in that particular area. To support people, and you might get a wheel that looks something like this, where you're, say, doing really well in that light greenish area, that sageish area on education. There's a lot of opportunities in, say, the stigma reduction area, the light purple. Okay, so let's look more closely at these and stop me as we go. So the first area is education. So educating our employees. So I've highlighted manager training there because I think that that's the most important place to start with education. We really need to up their knowledge so that they can support people. Start those hard conversations with people they think are struggling. They're going to reduce stigma because of this. They're going to normalize talking about mental health. They're going to empathize. They're going to lead by example and create a psychologically safe environment. And this is going to mean that people will start talking, reach out and get the supports they want, start feeling better about themselves so that there's a reduction in self-stigma. We also need burnout to be on the radar of managers. What are the opportunities for them to mitigate this, and how will they know if someone is heading that way? Because we like anything to do with mental health, the sooner in somebody's journey south that we intervene, the better the outcomes. DEI is listed there because we know the overlap between people not feeling included, accepted, and celebrated, and mental health issues. Okay, so there's a real tie in there. We want everyone, so once we've done our managers, ideally we go to our employees. We want everyone to understand the signs and symptoms of mental health and burnout and how to mitigate risk and how to get help if they need it. We really want to be working towards people understanding that it's in their best interest to have a mental fitness plan, just like we have a physical fitness plan. We know, since the 70s, since the 20-minute workout, we know that if I want to be physically healthy, I got to be moving. Well, we want people to start having the same mentality about their mental health. If I want to be mentally healthy, and there's certain things that I have to intentionally, weave into my week, right? And we can support that with education. The other thing, sorry, I'll say one more thing about education. The other opportunities around education is to educate people on some of those areas that create the most stress. And that is, for example, financial well-being being the biggest, I would say, sort of sub area there. We know that people who, during the pandemic, people who were experiencing the biggest mental health drop were people that didn't have a financial safety net, regardless of what their income was. It was the safety net that really was the predictor of their mental health. So financial well-being, elder care being another example of something that if people can understand how to decrease that burden for them, then we can really help them with their mental health. So education, it can be great, but it can also be, people can have short-term memories about it unless we're taking some of that education and we're continually integrating the tools, keeping things on people's mind, integrating things into their day-to-day workplace, or making things more accessible for people. So for example, we could start each meeting with some kind of tool that keeps it on people's mind, whether it's a gratitude check-in, or it's a minute of box breathing, or it's a little bit of time in a breakout to connect with colleagues and share what's going on with them, right? We can address SAD, for example, seasonal affective disorders, by potentially buying people SAD lamps, or talking about it, or educating, or having plants around. We want to encourage people to do physical activity breaks, make physical activity options more easy for them by flexible work hours, by maybe gym subsidies or online fitness classes. So there's lots of opportunities here. So reactive support, our next category, is the term I use versus proactive support. So these are the things that you want to have in place for the people who are already struggling, or when they start struggling. So for example, is there a known employee who they can go to if they're struggling? So if I'm struggling, I know I can contact so-and-so, and they're going to help me out and really treat me well, and it's going to feel confidential. Do you have an employee assistance plan? Do you have coverage for people if they need to get therapy, which we know is expensive? So financial coverage, benefits coverage. If you're a big enough company, maybe you even have an on-site therapist or social worker who's there at set times of the month or the week. Do you have a process for people when they're on leave for mental health issue, both while they're on leave and when they return to work? So much information out there on that. It's really the intentionality of how you treat and what you do when they're on leave and what you do when they come back is going to make or break the success of that return to work and whether or not they choose to return to work. Do you have, for example, have apps that people can use for cognitive behavioral therapy, internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy? Maybe you have virtual mental health services so that people can call for support from the comfort of their home and talk to a therapist. So this is something that can either be included in your EAP or is extra. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. And I've added access to doctors for physical issues there because, again, there is this positive correlation between physical health and mental health. So if I'm dealing with a physical issue and I'm finding it hard to find the right doctors or get the help that I need in that way, then, or even on a day-to-day basis, if I need to find a doctor for my kids, then that can start to impact people's mental health. Okay, I'm going to take a breather there. If you have questions or you want to jump in with anything, let me know before I do the last bit of the pie. Okay, so I wish stigma was a thing of the past regarding mental health. It's definitely improving, but you'll see some stats there. It's still definitely an issue, and it's the #1 barrier for people seeking help that they need early, starting to discuss it with their employer. And it's also leads to self-stigma. So it's lowering their self-efficacy, their confidence in themselves. And one of the main things you can do is educate people on the myths of mental health, all employees, so that they understand the rock stars among them who live with mental illness, and they start to communicate mental health regularly. You know, it's great to be able to use existing employees who are living with mental health to talk to your employee base. That can be really powerful for reducing stigma as well. And educating, a big thing to do with reducing stigma is to educate those managers, as I talked about before. So with resources, is there a reliable portal where people can read or watch videos on something that they are dealing with themselves or a family member is dealing with related to mental health, be it about anxiety or depression or burnout? Are there tools they can use to measure their own mental health? Do they have apps that they can use to help support themselves, whether it's mindfulness apps or internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy? Do they have access to exercise through online classes, for example, or gym subsidy? Do they have helplines at their fingertips? So your people should absolutely be able to whip up the phone number for a crisis line, a suicide line, a way to find therapists, all of that. So making that easy is going to be really helpful. So with the measurement and assessment, first off, people need to feel and be heard. Have you asked your employees what they're experiencing right now? What's on their mind, what they need, how you can help? #1. You may think you know, but and maybe you do know, but just the asking will go such a long way to them feeling cared about. And you want to keep employees' desires at the center of your strategy. So use that data from however you're going to ask them to guide what you do for them. You also want to measure in order to understand whether your supports are working. So if you take a baseline measurement of things like how supported do people feel? What's the stigma like? What's their education level like? Do they understand what a mental fitness plan is and what things they can do? If you understand those things in the beginning with a baseline assessment, then when you measure again, you'll know whether or not your strategies are working or beginning to take effect. So measurement can be really important. You can also use measurement tools to measure specific things like their happiness, their resilience, and we'll talk about those things, some ideas around that later. Well, as the saying goes, culture eats strategy for breakfast, so we can't ignore our culture's impact on mental health and resilience. This is where some of those 13 psychosocial risk factors come into play. We need to intentionally, and I know we've started with things, working from home is an example of something that's helping a lot of people. So we need to intentionally design a culture of psychological safety, which includes things like appreciation and gratitude. It seems small, but it is huge for people. They're now seeing this shift where things like that are more important to people than their salary, as long as their salary is meeting their basic needs, right? Trust, we keep talking about flexibility in their day, mental health tools that work for them, that are integrated. We see things there like kindness and respect, DEI, again, very important. And this workload thing, it's hard because it's hard to have enough employees right now, for sure. But workload is a big thing to look at, and whether or not have a culture that is allowing people to separate work from home life in terms of when they're receiving emails and calls and things like that. The last four, just briefly, still very important. We know meaning and purpose in one's life is one of the 6 crucial pathways for human flourishing. So are people connected to the meaning and purpose of the work they're doing for you? Do people have enough income to support themselves and have a safety net and cover therapy if they need it? Do people have opportunities to learn and grow, which builds self-efficacy and resilience and happiness? And are people physically safe? That was, COVID, that was one of the bigger issues. Do people fear that? That's maybe lowered a bit, but safe in general from other hazards. So there's a lot there, and we're going to talk about where to begin later because, 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you can tackle in the next 12 months, right? So I'm giving you lots of options and you're going to pull, but we're going to talk about the most important and where you might start in a second. So just digest that for a second. Perhaps you could even, if you're someone that wanted to print things out, you could rate yourself in those areas. So over the last decade, I have been watching different tools and resources that are out there and sort of building my own little database. And more recently, at the beginning of this year, another project that we ventured on was to start really diving into the different apps and wellness software and resource sites that are out there that can support our clients. We interviewed and researched 50 to 100 different services. We demoed lots of them. So a lot of our employees have gotten involved in different services so we could really see how they play out. And so I'm going to talk about some of those tools now. This is sort of a short list, a curated list of things that I think are helpful. So I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second and then share again a document that I've handed out to you that I'm going to go over. So you should see a document that says mental health, anxiety, depression, resilience, and cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, so I've created this document so that there's lots of things that you can find out when you're ready to find them out. And I'm going to walk you through and sort of point out a couple of things that I think are good to know about. And you see an interactive, clickable table of contents there, but I'm going down to, so the first category is assessment and measurement tools. So there's lots of different things you can measure. There's lots of different ways that you can measure. Right from, you can build your own survey that can have 3 or 4 questions in it, to, for example, if you already have a wellness app or software, many of them have built-in measurement, different kinds of measurement tools, HRAs, and so on. If you're trying to figure out how you're going to measure your return on investment or your return on value, you can start tracking things internally, like absences, drug utilization, your benefits, EAP utilization, things like that. Get a baseline, and then go forward. You can track productivity and see how it's influenced by some of the things that you put in place. We can always help with some of those measurement tools as well. Number 5 there, I mentioned the national standards guarding minds at work that can measure those 13 psychosocial risk factors. So that's available to you. There's links for everything here. You can also do things like either send these tools out to people to self-survey or sort of have a campaign around things. So measuring burnout, for example, measuring perceived stress, measuring financial well-being or happiness or resilience. Some of these are just interesting on your own. Like, have you ever wondered how happy you are? You know, you might have a sense of it, but what does it look like when you really measure it, right? Authentic happiness has tons of different scales on it that are really fascinating. I've also created a separate document called Self Check-in that we sent to you that looks like this, where these are different mental health scales or check-ins that they can do to see, you know, where their anxiety or depression or sadness is at, if they're wondering, or if they want to use it with a family member, like a teenager. Okay. If you're looking for speakers, your employee assistance plans are great resources. They have lots of different speakers on lots of different topics in lots of different formats. So that's an idea. You can always reach out to us as well. We have work with a whole host of experts that do presentations on different fields related to well-being. In terms of educational tools, so the mental health first aid certification is extensive but very good. We see some companies that are either mandating or encouraging their leaders to do it. It's a time commitment. It's usually over 2 days, about 4 hours per day. And I think there's a little self work they have to do prior to that, but that's definitely one thing that can help educate your managers, reduce stigma in your workplace, increase their confidence to support and interact with employees that may be living with a mental health issue. There's also another extensive program that was put out by Queen's University that's geared specifically towards leaders. I think they've changed that a little bit over time. I think that that's a full 1 day thing now live. And then there's components that people work through, like modules that people can work through on their own time. Again, you can use your EAP for articles and videos. And in general, I want to say that EAPs are competing for your business. And as a result, and probably because they know it's the right thing to do as well, they are really producing a lot of great resources, written resources and videos. So, you know, if you can't afford or don't want to have a speaker come in, then pick a video that's on the topic that you want to do, get everyone together, or do it at a town hall, watch it together, and then have time for people to talk about it, ask specific questions or talk about it with peers. I think that if you're already paying for an EAP, exploring what they have to offer and what their add-ons are is really worth your while. And we, as your benefits consultant, can help you set up a time to meet with them and help you navigate that. Insurance companies themselves are also producing a lot of education and articles and videos that you can use. So software companies that are geared towards supporting mental health, here's sort of a short list of ones that might be of interest to you. This is definitely more of a financial commitment. And they all do something a little different. So Some of them, they run challenges. Some of them people can, there's education videos that people can watch. They can collect points for doing different things in their lives that promote mental health. Some of them are more about providing therapy or ICBT. They're typically charged on a per employee per month basis, and some of them might have a year minimum, for example, but things worth thinking about, especially if your company's on the bigger side. Internet cognitive based behavioral therapy. So CBT is sort of the gold standard of therapy for helping people understand how to improve their mindsets in order to improve depression or anxiety, for example. It also improves our life in general, even if we're not doing that. It gives us more hope and optimism, more of a growth mindset. And there's lots of companies now that are providing the ability to work through modules on your own, as opposed to working with a therapist. So those are different links to different ones there. Many of your EAPs are associated with a particular ICBT program that you can add on. It's typically a financial add-on to your current EAP plan. The government did have MindBeacon and Ability CBT free during COVID, but that has finished. You can still get access to these as an individual or as a company. There's usually company rates. Bounce Back is a program, though, that's still free by the government that people could work their way through. So tools that allow access to activities that promote mental health. For example, Bright Amenities is a software app. Well, actually, you can use it internet-based or like web-based or on your phone. And this is live and on-demand physical activity, everywhere from something that's like 3 minutes to something that's an hour. So it's great for like just bursts of physical activity breaks. Sino is something, and we've piloted in-house Bright and we've piloted in-house Sino, so we can speak to those, and we've piloted Mindku actually. So we can certainly educate you more on this. But Sino is one where you can get all sorts of things. So if I have Sino, if my company has Sino, I could choose from, I could do an aromatherapy session. I could do like education session. I can get a therapy session. I can get coaching. I can go to on-demand or live fitness classes. They're really expanding the different things that are offered there. And then MindQ is a company that provides live guided meditation. So for example, we were doing it Tuesdays and Thursdays. We took a little hiatus right now, but we were doing it Tuesdays and Thursdays over a 6-month period, just for 15 minutes at a certain time of day. Everybody would jump on and do it together. So virtual mental health therapy services. This is becoming popular because we know it's hard for people to find therapists. So these companies not only have a roster of therapists that people can choose from, but it's typically at reduced rates from what you see if you're just trying to find someone out there. You know, it might be in the $100 range per hour to, I've even seen ones that are lower than that, to the, instead of like the 200 and up range that you might find if you're trying to find someone yourself. So these are things that you can, as a company, purchase for a period of time. The other thing that's good about some of these is the continuity of care. So with your EAP, which is great, people will max out at maybe between 3 to 5 sessions with a therapist or a social worker. With many of these, for example, like Inblot, once you have found a therapist that you think is a good fit, you can work with that therapist indefinitely. So there's a certain amount of sessions that would be covered, for example, and then you can continue to work with them at that reduced rate because your company has that relationship. Again, stop me anytime if you have questions. I'm going to take a sip of water.
Nicole, I'll just add a quick point here. Is what you're seeing above is a bit of a merger between telemedicine and mental health, digital mental health. So when someone goes through the same door, they can actually go in the right direction that they need to go in. So you're going to continue to see consolidation of these providers so that they become kind of a one-stop shop. And there
Yeah.
are a few that have really bought of many different sources and brought it into one. So you'll keep hearing about that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of movement over the next year to 2 years where, because the big fish are buying the little fish. It's like the race to see which big fish can have as many great things as possible so that that's the one stop shop that you're going to buy into.
Yeah.
Again, so that your employees have sort of one access point and they can get whatever tools and things that they want. So various mental health apps out there, some which are free, some which are paid, many have corporate rates. Excuse me, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you see everything from things that will help with support anxiety to things that will help support stress, cognitive behavioral therapy, and more. So lots of different things there. And you can decide whether this is a document that you want to pull from to send some of these ideas to your people, or you just want to look into them, right? To what works for you. We have mindfulness and meditation apps here. Again, some are free, some are not. So, you could, for example, send out a resource kit on mindfulness and meditation apps to people and just copy these and send them out. I love Insight Timer as an example. Great free tool. Financial well-being resources and ideas. So we know financial well-being is huge. Right now, should be a huge component of supporting people's mental health. So there's, for example, one idea is to go to one of these sites, number one, that has great educational videos and just, have it be part of your town hall. You're going to watch 1 or 2 of these, and then you're going to provide time for people to chat about it. Maybe you even go as far as providing a half a work day where people can work on the steps, because that's often the problem. We can't find the time to sit down and figure out, where am I spending my money? How much money have I actually saved? What's my future looking like? Providing them time to do that, rewarding them for doing that is a possibility as well. If you're looking for speakers on this issue, again, EAP, we also have somebody who does it. We really need to be encouraging people to talk more about money, because we're keeping it hidden, stressing us out, and we're not getting the help that we need with regards to it. Here's a great free resource that you can point people towards that has credit counseling, My Money Coach, so different ideas that you can use there. Some other resources, Not Myself Today, you've probably heard of. It's been around for quite a while now, actually, before it's sort of time. It is something that a company can invest in that's got different activities, campaigns to educate people, reduce stigma, and foster supportive work cultures. We've got some links there to the national standard. Some book recommendations. This 5-minute journal is a journal that I have used for 3 years. It's amazing. It's aligned with positive psychology, which is one of my backgrounds. It's quick and it changes your mindset using proven research. It boosts your happiness and it helps you reach your goals, and doesn't take a long time to fill out, because I'm not like a journal writer person, but this I can just a couple minutes and it's done. I keep it beside my bedside table. There's some other books there. Some videos. This first one is videos of real people talking about their experiences living with mental illness. So that could be something you could show and then provide people time to talk about. Therapy in a Nutshell. She's great. She's a therapist who creates these educational online videos that I find that talk about different tools for anxiety. I find it really helpful. Psychological safety. So there's some different videos there if you want your leadership to increase their social emotional intelligence, their ability to create psychologically safe work groups. There's some resources there. Lots of articles here that are worth reading, some on burnout, some on mental health, and then free government help services, including therapy and apps that you might want to make your employees aware of, free counseling services even. And then finally in this document, there's this section number 14, which is activity or integration ideas. So the first one there is one that was given an idea that came from Jennifer Lee, who is from Open Access. She is so creative. She's not with us today. She had a family thing on. But one thing she did, she was trying to do something social. We had done a resilience building webinar with her employees. And one of the things we talked about was the benefits of getting in flow. So she had the idea to send everybody these little puzzles and that she could send in small packages. So it was cheap to send to all of the employees. And she sent them chocolate as well, because who doesn't love chocolate? And there's antioxidants in it, right? And they had a social where people were working on their puzzles, they were chatting, they were eating, and they were in flow. There was music in the background. And it took sort of this, because people had something to do with their hands as well, something they could be focused on, it sort of took the pressure off creating conversation, which was nice. So I've talked a little bit about ideas around meeting integration, integrating something into those weekly meetings that you have. It's a great way to keep these tools on people's mind and to keep benefiting people's mental health. So breathing exercises like the ones that we did, maybe sharing an emotion word, either writing it beside your name, or there's these chalkboards that you could purchase, everybody, that people can either draw an emoji on of how they're feeling or write a word. And I've given all sorts of links below to buttons and mental health buttons and stickers and magnets and wristbands and chalkboards and even chalk markers. People love getting things. So they would have fun with that. Sorry, and I got to go back up to my ideas. Okay, here we go. You know, again, back to meeting integration, starting the meeting with people being able to say what their wins for the week were, either personally or related to work, or something they appreciated about a colleague did, encouraging physical activity during those meetings, starting with humor, all of these beneficial. Sharing pronouns in Zoom. So this is a nod to DEI. When people see pronouns, a variety of different pronouns, it increases acceptance and inclusion, makes people feel seen. I know we're not used to it yet, so it's just getting our head wrapped around that, but it's something you could choose to do. Number 4, having monthly one-to-one manage or peer check-ins, or having a buddy system in the office where people are encouraged to meet and schedule in these one-on-ones, so you can really see how people are doing and find out about their life and make a connection. And that's going to increase the likelihood that they will come to somebody when they're struggling. It's also going to make them feel more engaged and form relationships, which we know are paramount to people wanting to stay in your company. Encouraging physical activity breaks. Maybe you have a thing where everybody at 10 o'clock goes and takes a physical activity break in your office, and find somebody to chat with while they're on their walk. Setting boundaries for people. So boundaries around emailing or phone calling or texting after hours. Introducing clubs or groups for people to join who have shared interests within your company. So again, we have this loneliness thing happening. We also have this retention thing happening. And we need people to connect with your company and connect with other people. So having like some groups, you can encourage people to start one where they're either just, you know, finding a time to meet, or they're posting things, can share ideas. So it could be knitting or running or golf or video gaming or D&Ding or parenting, cooking, you name it. A few more ideas here. Having having set weeks or months around mental health, like having a focus on it where you have different things going on. So for example, you could have a mental health self-check-in week. So it's a week where you're going to be advertising about mental health. You're going to be encouraging people to check in with how they're doing, encouraging managers to talk to their people. Or you could have a mental fitness plan week or month where you're educating people on different things that they can do as part of their mental fitness plan, exposing people to those different tools so they can experience it and see if they like it. And also wall decals. So there's some mental health wall decals. If you're an office where people are coming in to see each other, then why not put some of these decals that you can buy on the windows or different parts of the office, so that people know that you are there for them and what they're going through is important, and you want to support them. So starting to narrow things down a little bit for you. The 10 what I feel is the 10 most important components of a mental health strategy. So the first one is to establish in your company a vision or a philosophy around employee well-being, thriving, and support. Because until you have that philosophy that's bought into and confirmed and supported by the powers that be, it's going to be hard for you to get what you need in terms of a budget, in terms of, time that employees can invest on these things, in terms of having putting a committee together and so on, right? So starting with that vision and philosophy and getting buy-in on that, because that is going to be the impetus for the structure of whatever you decide to do and the support for that right from the top. The second is the second most important component is to form a mental health committee. So you don't want to be the one person in your company that's driving all of this. You need other people. You need ambassadors so that you're more far-reaching, so that you can delegate, so that you have more ideas coming out and more people who are reducing stigma and so on. So ideally, it would be great to have people on that committee who have lived experience with a mental illness or a mental health issue. Training your leaders first. Okay, training them in whatever those different ways are that I've come up with, whether it's through your EAP, whether we can offer something for you, whether or not it's mental health first aid, any of those, getting your leaders trained on those different components that are important. Doing an assessment, some original assessment for baseline and some original assessment to understand needs and interests of your employees and what's their perception of whether or not they're being supported, and whether or not there's stigma, and if they know who to go to, and so on, whether they have the supports that they need. Integrated tools, a few tools that are happening at minimum monthly, if not weekly, whether it's in meetings or whether it's resources that you're sending out or mindfulness sessions, something that's keeping it on people's mind and allowing people to put these tools in regularly. Culture, so reflecting on your culture and continuing to create a culture that's supportive of mental health and psychological safety and reduced burnout. Things like flexibility and appreciation, transparency, trust, workload, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Making resources easy for people to find. So they should know exactly how to reach out to their EAP. They should have helplines that are at their fingertips. They should have a point person they know they can go to. You need a wellness budget. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail in a second. It doesn't have to be big, but you need to start with one. It's not something that maybe you've had before, but we're putting a lot of money into reactive health supports, which is fantastic, but we also need to be proactive. And that includes somebody in your office that or somebody external. If you have a partner that's going to help with this, somebody's being paid a certain amount of their time to focus on wellness. It can't be at the bottom of somebody's to-do list. If I finish X, Y, and Z, it has to be part of it. When launching something, if you're about to do something, whether it's live education or anything, give people lots of lead time, explain why people change. It's like, oh, what's happening? I don't want to, what are you doing to me, right? So lots of lead time. Why are you doing this? How is this going to help them? What are the things they can partake in? Having a variety of things so it meets different people's needs, and it's aligned with their ask, the ask you did in that assessment, right? Accessible and affordable therapy with continuity of care is the 10th. So is it your EAP? Do you have a virtual mental health so that they have access to therapists that they can continue to use for as long as they need at a reduced rate? Okay, so those are some 10 most important components. Again, start with one. So overall, we look at all organizations of all sizes in Canada. We're looking at the stats in 2020 where that 45% are offering or expanding access to virtual mental health services. I think that's a bit higher now since 2020, and 53% enhancing their well-being programs. If we look more at the SME market of 50 to 1,000 employees, here's what we're seeing. So most companies in that SME market have increased their paramedical coverage to allow people to afford therapy, have an EAP program, and have increased flexibility in location and work hours. I would also add to there, that's not on there, but I think, you know, that culture piece, people being more understanding and caring. Some are using things like the mental health navigator or virtual therapy, so that it's what I've talked about. People can use that service that their company is paying for to find a therapist and work with them. Some are introducing webinars on mental health, burnout, signs and symptoms, things like that, training their managers. Gym subsidy, mental health articles, sending out mental health articles. If they're doing measurement, it's typically through their engagement survey, which typically doesn't have a lot of questions related to mental health, but it might have a few. Whoops. And then rarely we see people using mental health wellness software. That's bigger companies, LifeSpeak, for example, which is a company that offers a database of educational videos from highly experienced and vetted experts. Rarely virtual exercise classes, weekly mindfulness sessions, internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy access, mental health first aid for managers, and DEI training. So those are things that are more rare in the SME market. One of the things we want to offer you guys as well, I mean, we're hoping that all of this information is inspiring you to do a few new things. Maybe you want to sort of launch a mental health week or month up and coming. So one of the things we thought might be helpful for you was to provide a live mental health session. And you can see there what would be included in it. This will be free. It would be 1 hour. And we would invite all of our clients to invite all of their employees. So yes, it's free. I mean, the trade-off is that it's going to be, you know, we're going to pick a day that may work for some of your companies and may not work for some other companies. But that's something we'll be informing you of, and you can hopefully, if it's something you think will be helpful, then you can invite your employees to that and maybe design something around it. Maybe you follow it by something else that's part of a launch that you're doing. So stay tuned for more on that. I have where to start. So really a lot going on here. I say something there about budget. Really, the bottom line is you could be spending $3,000 per year per employee on benefits, which is reactive support. You still need that. We're encouraging you to think about, well, what ratio do you also need to be looking at for proactive support? You know, do you need another 20% of a budget, for example, on top of that for that? And knowing that whatever you put in is at least giving you a 2-to-1 return. So you're going to be making money off that investment. That's at the low end. A lot of times it's a 3-to-1 return. So you see there recommendations on where to start. Decide on that. This is in order. Decide on that company mission or commitment. Form that mental health team. Do that assessment. Figure out if your benefits coverage is enough. Adjust it if you need it. You can talk to us about that. You may be fine in that area. Form that action plan. Get that budget. Train those managers. Make those culture changes. Again, you might choose to do 1 and 2 in the next 6 months. That's it. But you know, and then you're adding on layers. Make sure this one I would probably bump up. because it's an easy one, because I sent you a list of helplines that you could just forward to your people. Make sure people know where to get help. What tools are you going to integrate daily, weekly, monthly, and then also train your employees. Yes, start with your managers, but train those employees, because they're going to want to be able to support each other. They need to understand how they can help themselves and their family members as well. Thank you for joining in, and I look forward to chatting soon.